My name is Maya Bennett, and 30 years old, and on the night my parents tried to claim my house, my father showed up with a moving truck, a residency agreement, and the kind of confidence a man only has when he's already decided your answer doesn't count.
Rain was hammering the roof when he shoved the document under my door. It listed my address as their permanent residence and gave them access to every room except my office. Their signatures were already on it. Mine was the only line still blank. When I opened the door, my father stepped forward and pressed his hand flat against my shoulder. "Move, Maya," he said. "You've got room for us?" Behind him, my mother stood next to the U-Haul while my younger brother sat in the passenger seat, staring at his phone, refusing to meet my eyes. I shoved my father's arm off me. "Not tonight," I told him. He tried to force his way past the threshold. I pushed him back onto the porch. "Not ever." What none of them knew yet was that I'd already figured out why they lost their house, where their entire retirement had gone, and exactly how many times they'd quietly used my personal information to clean up after my brother. They thought the worst outcome of that night would be me refusing to let them move in. They were badly wrong. Before the week was over, one of them would accuse me of tearing the family apart. Another would beg me to bury evidence, and my brother would finally learn what happens when nobody shows up to rescue him for the 16th time. If you're new here, this is exactly the kind of story we tell on Mystie Reads, so go ahead and subscribe to the channel right now, because what my father said next is only the start of what they'd actually walked into. 3 days before that U-Haul showed up, my mother called while I was working in my home office. She didn't ask how I was doing. She said your father and I might need to stay with you for a few weeks. My parents had owned a 4-bedroom house outside Sacramento for 26 years. The mortgage should have been nearly paid off by then. They also had retirement accounts, a pension, and a rental property my grandmother had left them. These were not people who should have ever needed my guest room. "Why?" I asked. Silence. Then she said they were restructuring. That word alone told me she was hiding something. My mother had spent my brother's entire life softening his disasters for public consumption. An arrest became a misunderstanding. A failed business became a learning experience. Missed payments became temporary cash flow pressure. "Is Derek involved?" I asked. "Don't make assumptions," she said. That was confirmation enough on its own. Derek was 26, and by my count, he'd already been rescued 15 times. It started with his tuition refund disappearing into a motorcycle. Then unpaid rent, gambling losses he dressed up as investments, a leased sports car, 2 restaurants that folded within a year of opening, 3 separate business loans, tax penalties, and a lawsuit from a former partner. Every crisis followed the exact same shape. Derek called my mother. She panicked. My father declared that family protects family. Money vanished. Derek apologized, swore he'd changed, and reappeared months later with a bigger problem than the one before it. I stopped contributing after rescue number 7, when I handed over $18,000 to stop his eviction, and later found out part of it had funded a ski trip. My father called me cruel the next time I said no. My mother said Derek just needed encouragement. Derek told relatives I'd gotten arrogant after buying my house. The truth was simpler than any of that. Every dollar I gave him just bought his next excuse. During that call, I asked point blank whether their house had already been sold. "We'll explain everything in person," my mother said. Then she added, "You've got 3 bedrooms, Maya. It's not like you're actually using all that space." I looked around the home I'd bought after 2 years of working 2 jobs and skipping every vacation to save for it. 1 bedroom was my office. Another stored equipment for my consulting business. The 3rd was a guest room, sure, but an empty bed doesn't automatically create an obligation. "No one is moving in," I said. "Don't answer before you know everything," she said. "Then tell me now," I said. She refused. That evening, I pulled county property records myself. Their house had sold 12 days earlier. A second lien had been recorded before the sale even closed, followed by a notice tied to a private lender. Their rental property had changed ownership too. I called my friend Naomi, who worked in financial compliance. She told me not to speculate, but to freeze my credit immediately regardless. When I checked my report, 3 recent inquiries showed up from lenders I had never once contacted. None had opened an account, but someone had absolutely submitted my information. Every inquiry traced back to a holding company registered under Derek's name. I placed fraud alerts on everything, changed every banking password I had, and called an attorney that same night. Then I dug through my email. 6 months earlier, my mother had asked me for a copy of my driver's license, claiming she needed it to update a family insurance policy. I sent it without a second thought. Now I understood exactly what that request had really been for. My parents weren't just asking for a place to sleep. They'd lost everything, and somebody had already tried using my identity to reach whatever came next. The next morning, my father texted, "We're coming Friday. We'll sort out arrangements once we're there." "There are no arrangements," I texted back. "Do not bring your things." He replied, "You will not leave your parents homeless." That wasn't a request. He genuinely believed parenthood entitled him to permanent authority over everything I'd ever earned. I forwarded the whole exchange to my attorney, installed a second camera above the garage, and changed the code on the side entrance. Then I made one decision. I wasn't going to argue about whether I was a good daughter. I was going to make them explain in detail exactly what had happened to every single dollar. They pulled up Friday at 7:18 in the evening, right in the middle of the worst rain we'd had all week. The U-Haul stopped across my driveway, boxing my own car inside the garage. My father climbed out first. My mother followed him with a folder tucked under her coat. Derek stayed in the cab, eyes locked on his phone. My father hauled 2 suitcases toward my porch. He didn't ring the bell. He tried the door handle, then punched in the old keypad code from memory. After 3 failed attempts, he hit the door with his fist. "Maya, open up." I answered through the intercom. "Move the truck and leave." My mother stepped into the camera's view. "We drove 3 hours," she said. "Let us in so we can talk." "You were told not to come," I said. My father held up the folder. "We have a written agreement," he said. "This doesn't need to become dramatic." They had brought a moving truck to a house they didn't own and a contract I had never once seen. And somehow I was the dramatic one. "Slide it through the mail slot," I said. My father pushed the document under the door. The first page was titled Family Residency and Property Contribution Agreement. Under its terms, my parents would live in my house indefinitely, contributing financially whenever possible. I would cover utilities, taxes, insurance, and maintenance. They'd have access to the kitchen, garage, laundry room, and 2 upstairs bedrooms. Another clause described their stay as permanent, not temporary. If I ever sold the house, they'd be repaid for any improvements made. My attorney had warned me about exactly this kind of agreement, one designed to manufacture tenancy. This one looked built to create a future legal claim from nothing. I opened the door but left my foot behind the security bar. "Who wrote this?" I asked. My father shoved the door with his shoulder. "Move, Maya," he said. "You have room for us." The force knocked me back a step. I let go of the bar, stepped onto the porch, and shoved his arm off me. "Not tonight." He moved toward me again. "Not ever." Derek finally climbed out of the truck, wearing a designer jacket and holding the newest phone on the market, for someone whose ongoing crisis had apparently erased our parents' entire future. He looked completely comfortable. "Can everyone stop acting insane?" he said. "They just need somewhere to stay until we fix this." "Fix what?" I asked. "The business situation." "Which business?" "You wouldn't understand." I pulled a second folder off the entry table. "Would I understand Falcon Crest Holdings?" I asked. "The company that submitted loan applications using my social security number." His face changed instantly. My mother gripped the railing. My father looked between us. "Lower your voice," he said. "Why would the neighbors think this is anything but a normal visit?" Derek stepped closer. "I never took out anything in your name," he said. "3 applications," I said. 3 inquiries. One lender logged the IP address and the email used to submit them. That email belongs to your company. His eyes darted around, searching for an exit. My father stepped between us. Nothing was approved, he said, so no actual damage was done. That answer told me everything. He already knew. You knew he used my information, I asked. My mother started crying. We were desperate, she said. The lender wanted a guarantor with stronger credit. Derek thought he could list you temporarily and remove you later. You gave him my license, I said. She looked at the ground. My father said they were protecting the family's investment. What investment? I asked. He ordered me to let them inside. I refused. He called me heartless. I asked where the money had actually gone. My mother reached for my hand. Maya, please, she said. We sold the house. We have nowhere to go tonight. You sold it 12 days ago, I said. Where have you been staying since then? They exchanged a look. Derek finally admitted they'd been in an extended stay hotel. And where were you staying? I asked him. My apartment. Then they can stay with you. My lease doesn't allow long-term guests, he said. Neither does my permission, I said. My father slammed his palm against the doorframe. They can't stay with Derek, he said, because his apartment is collateral. That was the first fully honest sentence anyone had said all night. How much? I asked. My mother opened the folder and pulled out a spreadsheet. The total at the bottom read $540,000, retirement accounts, penalties, proceeds from the rental property, a home equity loan, and nearly every cent from selling their house. All of it had gone into Derek's companies, his debts, and his legal settlements. My father pointed toward my front door. This property has enough equity to stabilize things, he said. My house is not part of your situation, I said. You could refinance, he said. With your credit, we could consolidate the debt, save Derek's company, and protect everyone. There it was. They hadn't come for a bedroom at all. They'd come for my equity. I stepped back inside and tried to close the door. My father caught it before it latched. Move your hand or I'm calling the police, I said. You'd call the police on your own father, he said. A man is trying to force his way into my house after being told not to come, I said. His relationship to me doesn't change that fact. He let go of the door. I saw the disbelief spread across his face. He'd used outrage as authority my entire life. At 12, he took my babysitting money because Derek broke a neighbor's window. At 17, I gave up a school trip because Derek needed a tutor. At 24, I delayed moving out just to help cover his rent. Every sacrifice got framed as temporary. Every one of them became proof I could be pressured again. I reopened the door with the chain still engaged and set my phone where the camera could catch everything. You've got 5 minutes to answer my questions, I said. My mother said, Please don't record us. This is my property, I said. The recording stays. Derek turned back toward the truck. I called him back. No, I said. You wanted my equity. Explain why. He leaned against the railing. I asked how the $540,000 had actually been spent. My father started talking vaguely about opportunity and market setbacks. My mother finally started reading real numbers off the spreadsheet instead. $41,000 covered Derek's tax debt. $68,000 settled a lawsuit from his first restaurant. $90,000 went into a delivery app that never launched. Another $105,000 paid off private lenders after he'd guaranteed a loan using fabricated revenue projections. The rest disappeared into interest, legal fees, car payments, and his latest venture, automated luxury storage units that existed only as renderings in an investor deck. Where are the actual investors? I asked. Derek said negotiations were ongoing. How much has any outside investor actually put in? I asked. He didn't answer. My father said they needed to show family confidence before institutional funding would arrive. So, no outside investor has given him anything, I said. Not yet, my father said. And when the lender turned him down again, he used my information instead. Derek pushed off the railing. It was a preliminary form, he said. Stop making it sound criminal. The lender's fraud department can decide how to describe it, I said. His face fell. You contacted them, he asked. I contacted every lender that pulled my credit, I said. My mother covered her mouth. My father demanded I withdraw the complaints. You're putting your own brother at risk over paperwork that caused no real loss, he said. He was trying to hand me the consequences. Failing to succeed doesn't erase the attempt, I said. Derek stepped closer. Do you know what happens if they freeze the company accounts? He asked. You'll be blocking money that might not even belong to you. Those accounts pay my employees, he said. How many? I asked. 12. I'd already checked. State payroll records showed exactly 2 employees, Derek and his girlfriend, listed as creative director. When I told him that, he accused me of spying. You submitted my identity to lenders, I said. I checked public records. My father's anger cracked into something closer to panic. There's a closing scheduled Tuesday, he said. If the bridge financing gets delayed, everything collapses. What closing? I asked. My mother looked at him sharply. She hadn't known either. He finally admitted they'd found a private lender willing to issue a $400,000 loan secured by real property. My house had been listed as the intended collateral. You can't pledge property you don't own, I said. The lender knows the title's in your name, he said. They expected you to sign once we explained the emergency. You told the lender I'd sign before you'd even spoken to me, I said. Derek muttered, Dad said you always come around eventually. That sentence ended any doubt left in the room. They hadn't mistaken my silence for consent. They'd calculated that guilt, pressure, and showing up homeless in the rain would force me into cooperating. The lender gets written notice tonight that I never consented to any of this, I said. My father's face reddened. You'll ruin us, he said. No, I said. I'm refusing to be ruined alongside you. My mother gripped the folder tighter. Where are we supposed to go? She asked. You got money from the house sale, I said. She admitted only $31,000 remained. Use it for housing, I said. My father said it was reserved for Tuesday's closing costs. There is no Tuesday closing anymore, I said. You don't get to decide that for this family, he said. I decide what happens to my name in my own house, I said. He pointed up toward my staircase. That house is too big for one person, he said. Your mother and I helped you get here. You gave me $2,000 after graduation, I said. I paid it back within 4 months. We raised you, he said. That was your responsibility, I said. Not a down payment on my property. He stared at me. What's the point of raising successful children if they refuse to help when their parents actually need it? He asked. You didn't raise me to become your emergency fund, I said. I closed and locked the door. My mother knocked. My father threatened to enforce the residency agreement anyway. Derek shouted that I was destroying a deal worth millions. I called the non-emergency police line and reported 3 people refusing to leave my property. Once dispatch heard me describe the attempted entry, all 3 of them went back to the truck. Before pulling away, Derek walked up to the camera. You're going to regret embarrassing us, he said. I saved that footage in 3 different places that same night. The next morning, relatives started calling one after another. My aunt said my parents had been displaced and implied I'd invited them to stay in the first place. A cousin said I clearly cared more about an empty house than my own mother. Someone posted in the family group chat that success had changed me. Their version of events had been carefully edited. My parents had sacrificed their retirement to help Derek through a business setback. I'd promised temporary housing, then cruelly pulled the offer at the last second. Nobody mentioned the residency agreement, the identity theft, or the plan to borrow against my house without asking. Stay with me. Because everything that comes next is honestly the reason my entire family fell apart, so make sure you're subscribed to Mystie Reads before we get there. I didn't defend myself right away. My attorney, Vanessa, reviewed every single document. She found the residency agreement had come from an online template Derek had modified himself. One attachment contained language pulled straight from the proposed bridge loan, describing my home as family-controlled residential property and estimating its available equity at $280,000. A signature block had already been prepared under my name. My birth date, employment history, and income were all listed correctly. An old bank statement I'd once sent my mother was attached to the file. By noon, Vanessa had sent preservation notices to Derek, my parents, and the lender, ordering everyone not to destroy any communication tied to my identity or my property. She advised me to file a formal police report. I did. That afternoon, Derek called from an unknown number. "You need to stop this before it becomes permanent," he said. "Using a different number doesn't make this call private," I said. He paused. "Mom hasn't eaten," he said. "Dad's blood pressure is dangerous. They're in a hotel because you're trying to prove a point." "They have $31,000, I said. "That money's already committed," he said. "Not by me," I said. He insisted Tuesday's closing could still save all of us. "How does it save me when I have zero debt connected to your company?" I asked. "Your equity contribution would convert into ownership," he said. "What percentage?" I asked. "Still being finalized? Voting rights? Still under discussion. Guaranteed repayment?" He hesitated. "So, I mortgage my house, take on responsibility for the loan, and receive an undefined stake in a company with no actual locations," I said. He accused me of using technical language to avoid helping. "Technical language is exactly what separates an investment from a trap," I said. I asked whether he'd personally submitted the applications. He blamed a consultant. "Name the consultant," I said. He refused. Then he asked, "Why do you always need me to fail?" That question told me everything about the story he'd told himself. Refusing to fund him was sabotage. Asking for actual records was humiliation. Consequences were hatred. "I don't need you to fail," I told him. "I need you to stop needing me to absorb it every single time." He swore and hung up. 10 minutes later, my mother called. "Your brother says you reported him to the police," she said. "I reported unauthorized use of my information," I said. "Can you just say it was a misunderstanding?" she asked. "Was it?" I asked. She started crying, but I kept going with a specific question. "When you asked for my license, did you know Derek would end up with it?" She claimed she believed my father needed it for estate planning. "Did you send my bank statement too?" I asked. She admitted she'd forwarded a whole folder after my father said the lender needed proof the family had more resources behind it. "Did you ever ask why my resources mattered to that lender at all?" I asked. "Your father said it was temporary," she said. "Everything involving Derek stays temporary right up until the bill becomes permanent," I said. She admitted she'd actually opposed selling their house, but my father had promised the bridge loan would fix everything within 6 months, that Derek supposedly had a guaranteed institutional buyer lined up. "What was the buyer's name?" I asked. She didn't know. "Ask him for the actual contract," I said. "Your father will think I don't trust him," she said. "You no longer own a home because you trusted him without ever reading the fine print," I said. Then she revealed the $540,000 didn't even include a separate $85,000 personal guarantee my father had signed on his own. "So, the real exposure is closer to $625,000, I said. "We haven't lost all of it yet," she said. "You no longer have the assets to cover it," I said. She begged me to let them stay just 1 month. "Derek has an apartment," I said. "The lender might take it," she said. "Then he can sell his car and his designer clothes," I said. "He needs the car for meetings," she said. Even after losing everything, she was still protecting his convenience. "I'll pay directly for 3 nights at a modest hotel," I said. After that, you need a housing plan that doesn't involve my property. I won't transfer cash, sign a loan, host Derek, or hide any part of what happened. She called the conditions humiliating. The humiliation, I told her, came from showing up with a moving truck and a contract that treated my consent as optional in the first place. That evening, my aunt posted another accusation online. I responded exactly once. I uploaded a photo of the unsigned residency agreement with my personal details covered, alongside a still frame of the U-Haul blocking my driveway. I did not invite anyone to move into my home, I wrote. I did not consent to having my property offered as loan collateral. I am handling unauthorized financial activity through the appropriate channels. The group chat went completely silent. For the first time, my parents had lost control of their own narrative. Monday morning brought Derek's retaliation. One of my consulting clients forwarded me an anonymous email claiming I was under investigation for financial misconduct and had exploited my own parents. 2 other clients received nearly identical messages. Since my work involved compliance projects specifically, even a false accusation could genuinely damage my reputation. The sender had used an encrypted service, but Derek made one careless mistake. He'd attached a property record downloaded at 2:14 in the morning. The metadata listed the author as D. Bennett and the device as Derek's MacBook Pro. I sent everything straight to Vanessa and the detective handling my report. Then I called Derek myself. You contacted my clients, I said. He laughed. Prove it, he said. The attachment preserved your device metadata, I said. The laughter stopped instantly. That doesn't prove anything, he said. My attorney is already sending preservation notices to your email provider and your internet service, I said. He accused me of turning a family disagreement into a legal war. You went after my livelihood because I refused to mortgage my house, I said. You were already destroying my company, he said. Your company never had the right to use my identity, I said. His voice went cold. You've always thought you were better than me, he said. I remembered every dinner where our parents praised his potential and quietly dismissed my results. When I earned a scholarship, my father warned me not to make Derek feel inferior about it. When I bought my house, Derek told relatives I'd just gotten lucky. This isn't about who's better, I told him. It's about who pays for your decisions. He threatened to tell the lender I'd verbally agreed to everything. Every conversation at my house has been recorded, I said. He hung up. At 11:30 that morning, the lender contacted Vanessa directly. After receiving formal notice that I'd never consented, their compliance officer suspended Tuesday's closing entirely. The file had described me as a committed guarantor who would provide an executed deed of trust. At 1 that afternoon, my father showed up alone. He stood beneath the camera without touching the door. I need 10 minutes, he said. You can talk from right there, I said. He looked older than I remembered, though exhaustion never equals accountability. The lender froze everything, he said. Derek's operating account is restricted. Payroll's due. He has 2 employees, I said. There are contractors too, he said. Then he can provide invoices, I said. He closed his eyes. Your brother might face charges, he said. That depends on what he actually did, I said. You know what he did, I asked. Then why are you asking me to hide it, I said. Because a criminal record will destroy his life, he said. Did that concern exist before he submitted my information, I asked. He claimed Derek genuinely believed I'd eventually approve. Belief isn't consent, I said. He admitted he'd told Derek to prepare the paperwork ahead of time because waiting on me might cost them the lender entirely. So you authorized it, I said. I authorized preparation, not forgery, he said. You gave him my income and property details, I said. I knew you could help, he said. You knew I would refuse, I said. His silence answered that one for me. He pulled an envelope from his coat. There's another document, he said. Your mother doesn't know about this one. I told him to leave it on the porch. Inside was a side agreement between him and Derek. My father had personally guaranteed another $85,000 and agreed to transfer whatever remained from the house sale. In exchange, Derek had promised repayment once an institutional acquisition closed. The supposed buyer turned out to be a shell company registered 2 months earlier, its address a virtual mailbox, one of its managers Derek's old college roommate. "There is no real buyer," I said. My father lowered his head. "I know that now," he said. "When did you find out?" I asked. "Yesterday, once the lender suspended the closing," he said. "He asked me to delay cooperating with investigators until he could confront Derek himself." "No," I said. "Give me 48 hours," he said. "You gave him 15 rescues," I said. "I'm not giving him 2 days to alter records." "He's my son," my father said. "And I'm your daughter," I said. "You were willing to risk my home, my credit, and my career to protect him," I said. My father said I'd recover, that I was disciplined enough, that Derek couldn't survive a total collapse the way I could. That was the entire logic underneath every sacrifice they'd ever asked of me. I was punished for being stable because they assumed I could absorb the damage. "You keep taking from the person who prepares," I told him, "because the person who refuses to prepare always looks more desperate." "Then you call that love?" He said I lacked compassion. "Compassion is paying for 3 hotel nights," I said. "Enabling is handing you the deed to my house." "What are we supposed to do?" he asked. "Sell Derek's car. Cancel the fake closing, report the false documents, find work. Rent something you can actually afford. Stop believing one more loan will fix everything." He said those steps would expose Derek publicly. "Then he shouldn't have created facts that require exposing," I said. Before he left, my father said, "When this family finally breaks apart, remember that you chose the law over us." "No," I said. "You chose Derek's 16th rescue over everyone else. I'm just refusing to become rescue number 17. Before we get to how the investigation actually played out, take a second and subscribe to Mystie Reads, because what happened to my father's marriage afterward genuinely surprised even me. The investigation moved quickly once the lender handed over its records. Derek hadn't just entered my information on a preliminary form. He'd submitted a full financial statement claiming I'd agreed to guarantee the loan, complete with an electronic acknowledgement created from an email address built to resemble mine, one letter changed. The file also contained fabricated revenue reports, false investor commitments, and an appraisal of my house ordered without my knowledge. My father had supplied some of the underlying details, but Derek had assembled and submitted the entire package himself. My mother had handed over documents without fully understanding how they'd be used. That didn't erase her part in it, but it showed a real difference in how deep each of them had gone. My attorney told me to separate the emotional questions from the legal ones. Emotionally, I could decide later whether I wanted any relationship with my parents at all. Legally, I had to protect myself immediately. I signed an affidavit denying consent and handed investigators the camera footage, credit reports, client emails, and phone recordings. Derek's company accounts were frozen. His car got repossessed once the lender discovered he'd misrepresented his business income. His apartment had been leased through one of his companies and paid for with money my parents had contributed. Once the accounts froze, he got an eviction notice. For the first time in his entire adult life, nobody could quietly cover the balance for him. My father reached out to relatives for help, but by then the documents had already made their way through the family. The same people who'd condemned me didn't offer their savings or their spare rooms. They sent encouraging texts, recommended cheap motels, and suddenly became experts on personal responsibility. My aunt, the one who'd called me heartless, offered my parents her basement for 2 weeks, but only if they signed a guest agreement first. My father refused, calling the terms insulting. I didn't bother pointing out the irony. My mother rented a furnished room through a former coworker and started applying for administrative jobs. My father moved into an extended stay motel and sold his truck. For the first time in their marriage, they were living apart. Without a house or a public image left to protect, Cracks that had been hidden under years of rescuing Derek finally came into full view. One evening, my mother called and told me she'd found emails proving my father had known weeks before that U-Haul ever showed up that there was no real institutional buyer. He'd noticed the inconsistencies but convinced himself the bridge loan would buy Derek enough time to turn the fictional acquisition into a real one. He knew, I asked. He suspected, she said. That's what he keeps repeating to himself. She apologized for sending my documents, for treating my house like the solution to a problem I hadn't created. I listened without rushing toward forgiveness. An apology doesn't automatically restore trust, I told her. I know, she said. Being misled by Dad doesn't explain why you still showed up with your belongings after I already said no, I said. She admitted she genuinely believed I would cave the second I saw them standing outside my door. That honesty mattered more than any of her tears had. She'd participated in the pressure, even if she hadn't designed the fraud herself. I limited our contact to one call a week after that. She couldn't visit my house, ask for money, or push me to intervene for Derek. She agreed. My father didn't. He sent a 4-page letter accusing me of humiliating him and abandoning our family's values. The last paragraph said he'd forgive me if I withdrew my statements and helped negotiate a quiet civil resolution for Derek. I filed the letter in my legal folder and never responded to it. Derek eventually accepted a legal resolution requiring restitution, financial monitoring, and restrictions on managing investment funds going forward. His company dissolved. The promised storage facilities never got built. No institutional buyer ever existed to begin with. My parents recovered almost nothing from the $540,000. The remaining $31,000 disappeared into legal fees, housing costs, and debts they'd been ignoring for months. They lost their home, their rental property, their savings, and the future they'd spent decades planning around. Those consequences weren't my revenge. They were simply the result of choices they'd made long before that U-Haul ever pulled into my driveway. My actual revenge was quieter and far more permanent. I kept everything they'd assumed was already available to them. I kept my house. I kept my credit clean. I kept my business intact. I kept the right to decide exactly who got to cross my threshold. 6 months after the night of the U-Haul, I turned the guest room into a library and a small recording studio. My father had once pointed at that room as proof that I owed it to him. Every shelf in it now reminds me that unused space still belongs to whoever actually owns it. During the renovation, I found the original residency agreement sitting in my legal box. Their signatures were still there at the bottom, confident and complete, while the line meant for me stayed empty. I framed just that blank section and put it in my office closet. It's not a trophy. It's a reminder that a signature withheld at exactly the right moment can protect an entire life. My father once told me our family would break apart because I chose the law over them. He was wrong about that. This family had been breaking for years, one rescue at a time. I was simply the first person who stopped pretending the cracks were love. They expected to walk away with my house because they'd already spent everything else they had. They believed showing up in the rain would somehow transform their emergency into my obligation. They believed enough guilt would open a door that a keypad couldn't. But my answer was never temporary, emotional, or negotiable. Not that night, not the next month, not after another apology written just to dodge consequences. Not ever. If you've ever had to protect what you built from the very people who were supposed to protect you first, tell me in the comments. And if you believe boundaries are proof of love rather than the absence of it, subscribe to Mystie Reads so you don't miss the next story.